Good morning and good evening to everyone. You might recognize that this is familiar surrounding. No more monkeys. Are able to join us in the special celebration with the Peace Stupa in Cusco. If you were not able, I think the teaching that I shared, which is from this one very special text containing Gyobaji and Sungan's teachings on loving kindness, how to cultivate it. I think you should try to listen to it. It's on my Facebook page, but also at some point we will put it on the Drigong Dhammakirti YouTube page. And that recording will have both English and Spanish interpretation, which Claudia did for that. Yeah, so now let us start with the usual opening. Nampe senjen tamje de wa tang ten tung yang tang de ne de la na me pa yang ta pra so pe chan ju ren po je so pra jo ta la tang wa je pe ta no par je pe ge kar pa da tam je ke pe bar du cho pra je pa tam je ge se je pe ma nong ka dang nyam pe senjen tam je Dewa dan ten tung yang tang de ne de la na me pa yang tang pra so pe chan ju ren po je to pra jo da la tang wa je pe da no par je pe ge thar pa da tam je kem pe par du cho pra je pa tam je ge se je pe ma nong ka dang nyam pe sen chen tam je dewa dan ten tung yang tang de ne de la na me pa yang da par so pe chan ju ren po je to pra jo da la tang wa je pe da no par je pe ge thar pa dan tam je kem pe par du cho pra je pa tam je ge se je pe ma nong ka da nyam pe sen chen tam je de wa dan ten tung yang tang de ne de la na me pa yang da pra so pe chan ju ren po je to pra jo de je de sama ge ge par du lu nga ye sum ke wa la ko ma she par du lu nga ye sum ke wa la ko du de ring ne sung te ne ma san ta sam je par du lu nga ye sum ke wa la ko son je cho dang su ke cho nam la chan chu par du ta ne kyab su je Dāgī jinsū kīpē sōnāṃ kī tōlā pēnchē sāñcē tūkra shū sāñcē chūdāṃ sōkē chōnāṃ lā chāñchū bārdū dhāni kyabsū chī Dāgī jinsū kīpē sōnāṃ kī tōlā pēnchē sāñcē tūkra shū sāñcē chūdāṃ sōkē chōnāṃ lā chāñchū bārdū dhāni kyabsū chī Dāgī jinsū kīpē sōnāṃ kī Kala pencher sanje drupra shu manang kadang nyampe sanchen tamche dewa dang Dewe gendan tempra kyuchi dunya dang dunya ki kyudang dewa kyuchi dunya mepe dewa dang me dewa kyuchi nering chadang nidang dewa dang yang la nepra kyuchi Kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang tewe gendan dambra gyurche Dungyao tang dungyao ki kyudang dewa gyurche Dungyao mepe dewa dang me dewa gyurche Nering chadang nidang dewa Tangyao la nepra gyurche Kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang Dewe gendan dambra gyurche Dungyao dang dungyao ki kyudang dewa gyurche Dungyao mepe dewa dang me dewa gyurche Niring chadang nidang dewe tangyao la nepra gyurche And all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times before each of you lions among humans. I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds. All conquerors appear vividly in my mind. With as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands, I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss. With the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps, and superior incense, I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder heaped high as Mount Meru. All wondrous offerings perfectly arranged, I offer to you conquerors. These vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors with the power of conviction in noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance. I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizes hearers still in training and all wandering beings, you who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexcelled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. His ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon. I visualize as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Buddhas who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Devada Kinira Namandala Pradeja Soham. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Indroje Changwan Dile Narodang Mami Dapo Padu Chiting Gong Kalden Chuden Zawe Lame Shan Sajwe Lama Yidan Chogong Aso Yade Zeda Jen Jiro Kyan Denge Denge Zamen Gen Dabe Dozo Yalaja Sume Kya Wadu Je Changpa Chiden Gong Po Shala Dode Tato Sajwe Jole Me Jin Jiro She Tuje Chen Nenge Nenda Sen Nekyan Sen Dode Kukwa Jen Jiro Denge Jen Chang Sambe Ma Desa Tombola Yasen choking or them near Bema Junation, the Polo Mountain, to be just in hard to so Guru Bema's choking into damage, something over the Nasan choking and so so well I may show loss. Today also auspiciously marks the beginning of the month that is observed in the Tibetan Himalayan Buddhist tradition. According to the calendar that they keep, this is the month that they call the Vaishaka month. In Tibetan, it's known as Sakadawa. So, Sakadawa or Vaishaka month will last for 1 month. In the Southeast Asian calendar, and also the East Asian calendar this year, this Vaishaka month was actually last month, but in the Himalayan, the main calendar used in the Himalayan and Tibetan tradition, Vaishaka month or Sakadawa is this month, and today is the first day of that month. So it's an auspicious time that we are meeting. So this month of Vaishaka or Sakadawa, it is said that a number of major events in the life of Buddha happened on this month. And so this is why the interdependence of that has made this particular month to be, you could say, spiritually charged. So in one Vinaya text, it is mentioned that therefore, all actions, whether they are skillful or unskillful, positive or negative, the results of those actions, of actions created in this month, the results are significantly more far-ranging. And so there are numbers like, every effect is magnified by 100 million, something like that. But maybe don't need to be so specifics. There are no karmic accountants. You don't have to file any reports. But just to take this opportunity to consider, this as a time that we can direct more attention to paying attention with vigilance and mindfulness, these two qualities that are often in modern times just lumped as mindfulness. Vigilance and mindfulness. The second quality is the ability to remember the things that we should remember skillfully. So vigilance is like paying attention and remembering. And so paying attention to what? Paying attention to our actions of body, speech, and mind, and then remembering smriti or sati. Remembering what? Remembering the Buddha's teachings on skillful and unskillful actions, remembering the Buddha's teachings on the dangers of the three poisons, how any and all of our actions that are motivated by the three poisons necessarily produces suffering, and any of our actions of body, speech, and mind that are free from the three poisons are therefore productive of both temporary as well as lasting happiness. So think of this Sakadharma month, not so much in that way of like, oh, I can accumulate this much merit, it gets multiplied by 100,000 or 100 million. But think of this month as a skillful way that the Buddha taught how we can use this as a time to really come back to reflecting and keeping in mind the unmistaken and inevitable nature of the workings of cause and effect. So then, in the West especially, where Buddha Dharma is still relatively new, even though I think on the academic side of things, many Western scholars have learned all the ancient Buddhist languages and all of that. And in many ways, there's great advancement in the area, in a very specialized expertise area of academic research into Buddhist studies, even though that is true. But in the West generally, I think still Buddha Dharma is young, is early. But there is a view that has arisen among writers in the West, and some of them even established Buddhist teachers who either directly or indirectly will suggest that the teachings on karma, cause and effect that you find in Buddhism, they are more reflective of the Indian, and therefore Hindu background to the Buddha and to the Buddha's audience. So that, according to this view, when the Buddha did teach about karma, either he was, after all, also a product of his time. So just kind of blindly, just like everybody else, talk about karma, he also talked about karma. There is this view, Or a second a variation of this view, not so shocking, at least not so shocking to me, but still a little, still problematic, which is that, the Buddha understood that his audience, they believe in karma, and therefore he was just speaking to them on a level that they can understand, and therefore he talked about karma. But whether it's the first view or the second variation, basically, this idea is that karma, teachings on karma is secondary to what the Buddha really had to teach, or to what the Buddha was really special. All the things that the Buddha taught that was really special is not really karma. And in fact, they will identify things like the teachings on not self or anatman, or the teachings on emptiness. Oh, that's like really, really profound, special Buddha things. Karma, that's just what everybody accepted. So then the Buddha either blindly went along or skillfully went along. And then, so these views, right, is sometimes arising, from certain books that Western scholars have written. But again, as much as they definitely know these ancient languages really well, very well trained. But working in a vacuum, I would say, in a spiritual vacuum, uh, having only these ancient languages, mastery of languages, but not really understanding and seeing this bigger picture, which is to be informed by the spiritual context. It's easy to reach that kind of conclusion, or even to make that argument that, oh, this karma thing is just, either not really what the Buddha wanted to teach. Simply the Buddha went along with his environment. It's a real mistake, in fact, wrong view when it comes to really having right view about what is the Buddha Dharma. Because at the heart of Buddha Dharma is actually causality, causation. At the heart of Buddha Dharma is working with, refining more and more and more our understanding of cause and effect, understanding causality, understanding how things arise and cease due to causes and conditions. That nothing happens without causes and conditions. And things continue to remain due to a set of causes and conditions. And when these causes and conditions begin to dissipate, then whatever it is that was there will no longer be there, will change into something else. So everything, in fact, the Buddha taught, at the heart of what he had to say, is this causality, cause and effect. That everything else that the Buddha taught, even this very distinctive teaching on not self, selflessness, emptiness, right? All of that, in fact, were taught to elaborate on causality. It's to help us to better understand causality, how it happens, why it happens, and given the way that cause and effect works, in this way or that way. Given that, how should we conduct ourselves, body, speech, and mind? Where does suffering come from? Where does happiness come from? How to continue feeding the causes of suffering? Not how as in like you should, but this is how, we keep on reproducing this cycle called confusion, called samsara, and therefore how to put an end to this continuous feeding of the fuel for the perpetuating of confusion and suffering. Everything the Buddha taught beyond this central essence on causality, on causation, on interdependent arising. These are some of the terms, fancier terms, right? But at the heart, it is about skillful, unskillful actions and their consequences. I have to say, especially among those circles that read some Mahayana sutras or even Vajrayana, among those groups, among those circles, that's the most dangerous when it comes to getting sidetracked by these profound teachings. Oh, it's beyond this. Oh, it's beyond that. Oh, it's beyond good and bad. Oh, it's beyond cause and effect. That is a dangerous sidetrack. Yes, in Mahayana sutras, even in the early sutras, there are phrases like, going beyond good and bad. But if you look at the context, whenever it says going beyond good and bad, you will see that the context is always the Buddha saying to be free from liking and disliking, to be free from the habits of, oh, I think this. Oh, this is so good. Oh, this. Oh, yeah, terrible. Oh, I don't like it. So it's describing how
as we practice Dharma more and more, we become less controlled by the categories of like and dislike, pleasant and unpleasant. But that is describing the process whereby we become more and more free. It is not recommending that we, on this end of confusion, going, oh, Buddhas are beyond good and bad. Buddhas are beyond liking and disliking. So now, I can also be beyond good and bad, beyond liking and disliking. You're never going to get out of this mess with this attitude, because as it is, we already practice the confused attitude of that. Happiness, suffering, it's okay, and not a big deal. Yeah, that's why we are still here. And that's why I have some business entertaining you twice a week. Good for business, but very bad for all of us if we continue like this. Actually, even in business terms, footnote, I don't know if it's such a good business. So anyway. So even like now, right, in this chapter on wisdom, Shantideva, the main topic here, yes, is selflessness, is emptiness. So here, Shantideva, and of course going further back from Shantideva to Nagarjuna to the historical Buddha, they are revealing to us certain aspects of the final reality, the way things are. But this final reality of the way things are, ultimately, if we try to use words and think these words can adequately really tell us what it is, this is mistaken. So in these teachings, they all say this. Arjuna says this, Buddha says this, Shantideva says this, everybody says this. But nonetheless, they have chosen to use words to tell us a little bit, to the degree that words can be skillfully used, to tell us a little bit about this reality of that we call shunyata, emptiness, or anatta, selflessness. But even in what they have chosen to communicate to us about this final state, basically it is to show us how to not get stuck in a state of confusion and suffering. To not get stuck. Emptiness is when we understand a little bit about emptiness, if we understand it correctly, it leads to us not being stuck in a state of confusion and suffering. It leads us to having confidence to say, I can change. The situation can change. I can be free from this dukkha that has arisen. I can prevent future dukkha from arising because it is not fixed, because we are not stuck, because this is not permanent. So even the way in which teachings on emptiness or not self has been taught, it has been taught for the purpose of us being able to act, right? Being able to act and being able to act skillfully. Hence, the first 5 of the Bodhisattva's perfections, from giving all the way to diligence and meditative concentration, all those so-called pertaining to relative bodhicitta, they are the things that we have to put into action, that we have to choose to engage in by understanding the wisdom of the 6 paramita. So the 6 paramitas all work together hand in hand. So at the beginning of this chapter, and sometimes I see people quoting this, like, on Facebook or something, people like, oh, I want to say something profound, and then they will quote this verse that says, mm, mm, everything that has been taught so far is for the purpose of wisdom. And this wisdom is emptiness. Wow, 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 I don't think it is very skillful to say this in public, because it gives the impression, that all the other things are not so important. This is not about, oh, this is more important than this is more important than this. In fact, it's not about that. We should consider, all the teachings. Like, yes, what is the essence? What is at the heart? And here I suggested to you, consider how at the heart of everything that Buddha taught, it is about causality. It is about cause and effect. That primarily by understanding that we are going to be able to make changes and to get out of confusion. Right? So yes, of course, it's about wisdom, but there's a danger of thinking, oh, I have wisdom, but no way to implement. Like, no way to really do anything with the take-home lesson. I like to use this phrase of this wisdom, but just philosophizing in our heads, looking intelligent and smart, putting out quotes. Oh, it's all wisdom. Oh, it's all empty. Yeah. But if we cannot actually implement the meaning of emptiness, the meaning of no inherent self or inherent existence, if we cannot actually use that information, use that insight to change things so that causes of suffering is uprooted, causes of happiness are being fed, then, all this talk of profound emptiness becomes nihilism. So then it becomes really dangerous. So in the Dhammapada, verse 51 and 52, I'm reminded of this. It says, as a beautiful flower without fragrance, as a beautiful flower without fragrance is disappointing, so are wise words without right action. That's verse 51.
Sorry, Dr. Lai, can you repeat again?
As a beautiful flower without fragrance is disappointing, so are wise words without right action. As some of you know, I was just in Costa Rica, and it's the rainy season, but also that means a lot of flowers were blooming. And so I really experienced this. Like I saw some beautiful flowers, and then you walk up, and then once you see that they're beautiful, then you walk up and almost instinctively you try to smell. Oh, no fragrance. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing. So here Buddha is using this common experience that we all have. He's saying, in the same way, words might sound really good, but if we don't know how to put those words into action, how that actually translates to like a course of action, then it's disappointing, right? So the verse 52, the next verse, in contrast, it says, as a beautiful flower with a delightful fragrance is pleasing, so is wise and lovely speech when matched with right action. Yeah, so it's really, again, circling back to the significance of today. It's the beginning of the month of Vaishaka, according to the Tibetan calendar. And so, may this be a time that we turn our attention to this principle of cause and effect and causality, it become a time that we, like in other spiritual traditions, this is like the equivalent of, like, for Christians, it's the period of Lent. For Muslims, it's Ramadan. So we can think this is also our month of paying more attention to our spiritual practices. So you can intentionally choose a particular virtue of body, speech, and mind that you're going to focus on developing, encouraging, or some action, some service that you want to do, some charity, some discipline. So very common is for many Tibetan, Bhutanese Buddhists to observe a month of compassionate eating, meaning to become vegetarian or vegan during this month, or to minimize the consumption of meat, or to eat on the lower end of the food chain, to recycle more carefully, to consume less, all done with skill, done with understanding, will be very beneficial. That we would have taken good advantage of the fact that this is Sakadava. Particularly for some of you, I think you want to consider the habit of consuming alcohol. Maybe this month, you can make an intention, to not at all consume any kind of alcohol. Again, done it skillfully. When you do it skillfully, you can begin to see the dependency. And sometimes for some, it's gone from dependence to addiction, to alcohol, or to the substances that you rely on to relax. Or then you'll begin to see how much of these types of, in fact, one of the 5 precepts of a lay person. The 5th one is to abstain from consuming things that clouds the mind. So please think about that. So here, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll begin on stanza 88, which is the beginning of the section where Shantideva now takes us to the second of the 4 frames of 4 windows. I used the example of looking into what is here. And so the second window is feelings or sensations, Vedana.
Om Wage Jware Mum Wage Jware Mum 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 Om
So in stanza 88, Shantideva says, if suffering itself is truly real, why is joy not altogether quenched thereby? If pleasure is real, then why will pleasant taste not comfort and amuse a man in agony? So here in stanza 88, he's basically showing us how, with regards to these feelings or sensations, remember last time we met, I talked about how these feelings or sensation, we're not talking about these full-fledged feelings, I feel good, I feel not good, I feel inspired, I feel bored. I'm not talking about those feelings, but rather the three basic types that are precognitive. You don't even need to know what it is that you have come in contact with. You already have like a feeling of like and dislike or neutral. So meaning you experience, in fact, maybe it's not even like or dislike, but you experience pleasure, pain, or neutral, and then you have the reaction. With pleasure, then you have the reaction of like. With pain, then you have the reaction of dislike. Then with neutral, then you have the reaction of I don't care, right? So it's in that area, right? So here 88, Shantideva is saying, so if this suffering, if this pain that we experience, if it is real, right? That means, so for Shantideva, real is something that cannot be done away with. So if you experience real, or you experience pleasure, suffering, he says, then no way does joy basically here he's saying it's like, if this suffering is real, then how come you can feel joy later on? He's pointing to like experiences that we have. We remember feeling suffering, but then afterwards we remember, oh, then I felt okay. I felt joy when the suffering was gone. So here he's showing, he says, in other words, it's impermanent. It can change. It's not real. Likewise, the line 3 and 4. On the other hand, if you think pleasure is real, then if it is real, then when someone is sad, and whether you try to bring pleasure to them or they try to substitute their pain with pleasure, very hard. So how come pleasure, that which is pleasant, given to a man in agony, sometimes will not change anything? So that's 88. Oh, okay. So I'm back. So 88, stanza 88 is showing how, in our experience. And so he's just reminding us, saying, like in our experience, right? Pleasant and unpleasant, like and dislike are occurring all the time interchangeably. So from that, we should understand that neither of these experiences are real. Here, real means unchanging, permanent, right? Unchanging, not dependent on causes and conditions. That's a way of the traditional expression of that is like it exists in and of itself. Yeah. To say that something exists in and of itself means it doesn't exist dependent on causes and conditions. Now you might say, well, I never think of like and dislike or pain and pleasure as existing in of itself, as permanent. I never think like that. Yes, you never think like that, but you feel like that for sure. Especially when we're in the midst of pain. It feels like this is forever. Physical pain, pain that comes from loss. We feel it like this is going to be forever. Expressions like the pain never goes away. Especially like the loss of someone. Oh, the pain never goes away. Actually, Shantideva here reminding us, no, it goes away. It changes. Then with pleasure, with what we like, usually when we're experiencing that, we don't say, oh, we don't feel, oh, this is going to be permanent. It's when we have lost it, we say, oh, why did I lose it? That is when we expect it to be permanent. You see? So here, Shantideva says, whether it's like or dislike that arises from having experienced something that we label as pain or pleasure, these are not permanent, not real. They're interchangeable. So 89 continues making this point, basically. It says, if the feeling fails to be experienced through being overwhelmed by something stronger, now he's playing with the word feeling. He says, so basically here, as I understand 89, he's saying, we think feeling to be so real. But see how this feeling, this moment of feeling, can be overwhelmed by a more powerful circumstance of feeling. And so in that way, the bare experience called feeling itself is also due to causes and conditions. So 89, what I understand he's saying is that even this label called feeling, we should not be so fixated, stuck on it, to see the temporary interdependent nature of feeling itself. Even without getting into good feeling, bad feeling, neutral feeling, just the phenomena of feeling itself is completely dependent on causes and conditions. And causes and conditions are unstable and constantly changing. Then in 90, perhaps you say that only subtle pain remains. Its grosser form has now been overmastered, or rather it is felt as mere pleasure, but what is subtle still remains itself. So here Shantideva is continuing, kind of like playing, both sides, kind of raising objections, subtle points. I don't know if we need to get so into it, but here he's saying, well, basically he's saying, no, pain or pleasure can still be real. So that your argument that see how even if you have pain, then later you can have experience of pleasure. So what's going on there is not that the pain has gone away, but the pain has become smaller and pleasure has become bigger. So they are real. They are all there. And kind of he's raising kind of an objection of that sort. So then in 91, so that's basically 90. Then in 91, he answers that objection. He says, if because its opposite is present, discomfort fails to manifest, it's not the claim that it is a feeling, no more than a mental imputation. So there he is sort of playing with that logic of, okay, so if what you say is that the opposite of discomfort or pain is now present, and therefore discomfort or pain has receded into the background, then he says, hey, remember, here we're talking about feeling. Now you are talking about a feeling that is not being felt. So he says, what is a feeling that is not being felt? Isn't that just some kind of concept that you are entertaining for the sake of, being stubborn about how pleasure is real, pain is real. Don't you tell me they are not real. Basically, it sounds like, right, his argument is kind of, why is he, raising these seemingly minor points and this point playing with logic, No, actually, in a way, you could say he is treating our childishness with similar kind of childish response back, but wiser, childish response, right? By saying, sometimes you want to say like, no, the pain never goes away. Hey, but I see that you're having a good time now. Oh, no. You see, the pain is back there, hidden. Then Shantideva will say, well, now you're talking about feelings that are not felt, that is somehow back there with you. Are you sure? Or you're just having this concept. Sometimes we get so stuck with, the pain never goes away. Out of guilt, maybe. Or out of many reasons, we don't want to let go. So then we say, oh, it never goes. Because we fear, if it goes away, that we have betrayed some very cherished thing that we have held in our lives. Shantideva is not telling you to, move on and forget about anything and everything. It's just pointing out how the mechanics of our samsara, how it comes to be, so that when we are ready, when we want to, we can move beyond. So I want to share with you one line or one section in Khenpo Kumpel's commentary on verse 91. So he says, therefore, to consider that so-called pleasure and pain exist in and of themselves, and to strive purposely to gain one and avoid the other, is delusion, is craziness.
Sorry, Dr. Lai. May I know which page?
Khenpo Kumpel?
Yeah.
In the English is 361.
Verse 91.
Verse 91, yeah. Therefore, to consider that so-called, about middle of his commentary on verse 91. Therefore, to consider that so-called pleasure and pain exist in and of themselves, and to strive purposely to gain the one and avoid the other is delusion. It's craziness. He goes on to say, aside from the imputation of pleasure and pain by the mind, there's no such thing as a self-subsistent pleasure and pain. Self, like ultimately existing pleasure and pain, whether inside the mind or coming from outside. And then he gives some examples. He said, it's like melted butter, for example. He says, for a hungry person, that's like almost or inherently it's pleasure. But if that same person is sick, then the sight, the smell of butter can make them nauseous. Then he also gave the example. He says like a heap of manure. For someone obsessed with cleanliness, when they see that, it's like, ooh, yuck. He says, but for a pig, they are happy to roll in it. This is just a footnote, okay? Nothing to do with Buddhism or Shantideva. Pigs are not inherently, or even inherently, pigs are not like, naturally attracted to manure. It's because despite the saying, sweat like a pig, pigs cannot sweat. They don't have sweat pores. So they need like wet things to cool them down. So if they don't have access to like wet mud and their body is too hot, then the only thing available in their pigsty is manure, then they have no choice but to roll in it to cool their bodies down, by the way. Just as they say, you know, there are no badly behaving dogs, only irresponsible owners. Likewise, there's no dirty pigs. It's only irresponsible keepers of pigs, not making sure they have enough water or mud to cool their bodies down. Anyway, coming back to the Shantideva's point and Khenpo Kunthel's commentary, this also reminds me of a very famous passage from this Chinese Taoist text where Chuangzi, I think it was Chuangzi, who talked about how a beautiful woman, you know, when seen by a group of young men, you know, a certain kind of pleasure arises. Then the same beautiful woman, when she continues walking beyond the town where all these young men see her, and these young men are having certain kind of pleasure arising, the same woman, when she gets to the out of town and into like walking by this pond, all the fish that was on the surface of the pond coming up to eat, when they see her, immediately in fear, they all swim away. Then as she walks further, you know, out of town into the woods, the tiger sees her, a different kind of pleasure arises for the tiger. So there's no inherently pleasant, pleasurable things out there, or inherently painful experiences out there. It's our mind's habitual imputation that makes it so. Makes it falsely so. Makes us experience it as falsely permanent, falsely real. Take home lessons, so to say, in 92. Since it is like this, then the antidote is meditation and analysis. Absorption grown in the fields of their investigation is indeed the food and sustenance of yogis, of those who meditate, those who cultivate their hearts and minds. So he says, since, these feelings are not ultimately real, they are not permanent, they don't exist in and of themselves, they arise through causes and conditions, exist through causes and conditions, and because causes and conditions are extremely fragile, they will also change and go away due to causes and conditions. So since that is the case, then the antidote, the cure or the answer to how then do we respond to the reality that is being pointed out, he says, is through changing the mind, which is what meditation and analysis is talking about, changing minds. Sometimes we talk about, meditation, analysis, contemplation. At the heart, what we're talking about is we have to be willing to change our minds. No amount of studying the Dharma, no amount of chanting mantras, no amount of doing rituals, whatever it is, hang your whole house with tankas, all of that. If you're unwilling to change your mind, if you stubbornly say, it's just how I am, this is just how things are, this is just how I am, nothing's going to change. You have to be willing to change your mind. You have to be willing to see in situations where, by normal worldly standards, you look at situation and you say, oh, these are not good situation. Poor me, poor me. If you want to continue in poor me, there's not going to be any solutions. You will never get out of this. But a willingness. So the antidote is meditation and analysis, meaning the willingness to say, there's no such thing as, oh, this is how I am, like it's fixed. But that this is all interdependent nature that is momentary, transient, but my habits is solidifying them falsely. And so once we understand that, we can let go of that and learn to be willing to let pain go. Primarily, right, at the end of the day, Shantideva is concerned about the pain, not the pleasure. Of course, both pain and pleasure has those same characteristics, but primarily the main problem is pain. So he wants us to see that we can let go of this pain. We just have to understand. And then from the understanding, to develop the willingness to let it go. The first two lines of 92. The antidote is meditation and analysis. So we have to see that we bind ourselves with our own stubbornness. We bind ourselves with our own stubbornness. Yes, maybe there are contributing factors. There are circumstances, yes, but main point, we bind ourselves with our own stubbornness. But in 92, so beautiful, he says, since this is so, therefore the antidote, therefore the solution is meditation and analysis. Okay, here, Shantideva is not talking about, okay, now you have to sit like this, you have to breathe like this, you have to sign up for a course. Yes, all those things are helpful. But here, it's more. It's talking about the antidote. The solution is a willingness to let go of the stubbornness, a willingness to not get stuck. And this can come from analysis, paying attention to what the Buddha taught, and cultivating the opposite of that stubbornness, which is to let go. And you need to cultivate, right? Then the next two lines, it says, absorption grown in the fields of their investigation. Absorption here means, although it's a technical term, samadhi. And again, samadhi in the circles of meditators, people who do 10 hours, 12 hours, 10 days of vipassana, or lots of discussion about, mind, what is samadhi, what is not samadhi. Here Buddha says this is samadhi, there is not samadhi. Here, Shantideva is using samadhi as when the mind is settled, and settling more and settling more. And ironically, this settling is to be settled in not needing to control and not needing to be stubborn. So here, absorption grown in the fields, using the metaphor of agriculture. Absorption grown in the fields of investigation, in the fields of understanding. Understanding what? Understanding those lessons about how we bind ourselves with our own stubbornness. But once we begin to see the alternative to the mechanics of suffering, and how easy the alternative can be, then, the last line, this is indeed the food and the sustenance of yogis. Such simple and seemingly plain food will give you joy and sustenance.
Sorry, Dr. Lai, can you repeat the last sentence? Last one.
Yeah.
Such simple.
Yeah, such simple kind of conclusion, right? That it's just letting go of our stubbornness and developing strength in trusting that we can let go of the stubbornness, and a lot of the suffering that we have bound ourselves with can go away. And this becomes the food and the sustenance of yogis, of those who cultivate their heart. And this is what yogis mean here in verse 92. Even Looks like it's plain, very plain food. You say, where's the spice? Where's the excitement? But no need to chase anymore. It's true deliciousness, true sustenance. Finally, we have found. I want to share a few lines from Khenpo Kumpel's commentary, which is on page 362. And there, I find it very interesting. So on 362, at the top, the first paragraph, end of that first paragraph, it says, just as food satisfies and nourishes the body, likewise yogis, through the experience of pleasure, free from desire. The pleasure that arises from being freed from desires. nourish the body of qualities of realization. Nourishes the quality. Nourishes the body, sorry. The body of what? Not the physical body, but the body of the qualities of realization. So here in the commentary, he also wants to take us in the direction of understanding. Now, this is what you do with pain, what I've already talked about. But also then with pleasure, he says, what do you do with that? It's possible to experience pleasure without that experience becoming a cause for desire and attachment. And when you can experience this kind of pleasure that doesn't become a cause for attachment and desire, then that experience can nourish the body of the qualities of realization. In other words, all the delightful Buddha qualities, when they arise due to our ability to experience pleasure without desire.
Dr. Lai, can you repeat again?
Tell me what you heard.
Quality of Buddha.
Yeah, so the qualities of Buddhahood, in other words, right? All the wonderful qualities of Buddhahood. Khenpo Kuntpel is pointing out here that they arise due to our ability, our experience of pleasure that is free from desire. So that is how we should try to relate to the pleasurable contact, the pleasure that arises from this contact, right? Contact leads to Vedana. Remember the context, right? Contact leads to Vedana. Vedana can either be painful or pleasurable or neutral, right? So the painful one I have been talking about, how to be rid of that, right? Not to be stubborn, all of that, right? Now, in this comment, in Khenpo Kuntpel's commentary, he's also addressing, what do you do with the pleasure? With the pleasure that arises from contact, develop non-attachment. Make sure it doesn't become a cause for the arising of attachment and desire. Because attachment and desire leads to frustration. But if you know how to experience that pleasure without attachment and desire, then that delightful state of mind is also what encourages the Buddha qualities to arise. So again, right here, Khenpo Kumpel, just in this one line, he's pointing out what to do with pleasurable Vedana, pleasurable feelings. So here he says this pleasurable feelings, what you need to do is not so much to say, oh, they're impermanent, so therefore, you know, don't get attached. Yes, of course. But he also says that when you are able to let the pleasure be there, it's directly linked to the arising of Buddha qualities. So this is a very interesting point. Probably we need to practice to understand this on a deeper level. So the what is called the myriad virtues of Buddha, for the one, all these myriad virtues of the Buddhas at the Buddha state, they arise from this experience of pleasure with no attachment and no desire contaminating. In the Dhammapada, verse 141, it's also pointed out, beings naturally experience pleasure, but then this pleasure is contaminated with craving. Then when that happens, then only frustration comes. So then the opposite of that verse, of course, is, since we naturally have the capacity to experience pleasure, so that is not the problem. The problem is when we let craving contaminate that. So then if we don't let craving contaminate that, then here in Khenpo Kumpel, he more explicitly states, then it can become, in fact, the basis for the arising of the myriad Buddha qualities. So instead of frustration, right? If there's craving, it leads to frustration. And what is that frustration? That frustration is frustrated because what we deeply desire, we cannot get. But if in the face of experiencing pleasure, there's no craving, not contaminated by craving, according to Khenpo Kumpel, then true satisfaction comes in the form of the arising of Buddha qualities. The arising of Buddha qualities. What are Buddha qualities for? Who are they for? In fact, it is said that it is for the sake of others. Now we see how it all comes full circle. back to for the sake of others. Yes, so this is good. It's getting late for those of you who are joining us from Asia late at night. But I'm very happy we're able to spend the first day of Sakadawa, the first evening of Sakadawa, in learning from Shantideva some very, I think, meaningful, helpful lessons. So now that's the end with the Bodhicitta dedication, right? Which says, the excellent and precious Bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Higher and higher means, until the state of Buddha. Then the state of Buddha also has no limits, so it will continue to be higher and higher and higher and higher to no end. In our dualistic way of thinking, we think like, oh, once Buddhahood is achieved, stop. Everything stops. No, actually, it becomes greater and greater. There's no limit. Buddhahood has no limit. So Buddha qualities also manifest without limit. When confused, limitlessness exhausts us. When free from confusion, limitlessness is the very nature of everything. So don't think, bodhicitta ends at Buddhahood. In fact, bodhicitta continues to increase higher and higher. Changju Sem Chorim Poche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Yu Che Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Onen Gong Du Bel War Shu. Okay, ta-ta, everybody.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Again. Thank you. We'll meet again on Saturday.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. This was excellent.
Happy Sagadawa.
Gracias, Dr. Lai.
Yes.
Thank you, Antonio, waiting.